that transfers also into like how we carry ourselves, how we believe certain things, how we think we're going to be successful. And so if you can really program yourself to believe those things in your subconscious, it can't happen.
Inspiring you to reach your goals and live your dream. This is the Keaton Nelson Show.
Alrighty, guys. I have a very special treat for you today. I'm so happy to have her on. Mack Abbott, who is like the PR queen, and a good friend of mine who I had the pleasure to meet down in Nashville. And I said I just had to have you on. So, Mack, thanks for coming on the Keaton Nelson Show.
Woo! It's my pleasure. I'm so excited to just hang out with you.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see.
That's it. So I like to start like asking kind of like where you're from, where did you grow up, what was life like growing up? I just like and I've been saying this on the past few episodes, but I think it's good for people to realize that people who are successful are like living like a life that they dream of. Like you get to like your life is so cool. It's like a movie. It's really fun to watch you on social media. But just to show like people come from all different places and they're no different than you or the people listening, right? There's no difference, right?
Yeah.
Where are you from? What was life like? Parents were not together. Whoa, rich, poor, middle class. Yeah, all that stuff.
So I think it's so interesting. This question, I think it's super important understanding where people come from. I think it was Maddie Dalmaso. She just posted something on social media about thinking about you're living your dream life that you were dreaming about like when you were little. And now when I'm thinking about like my childhood and where I was, like did I ever think in a million years I'd be living in Los Angeles and have my own business? No, absolutely. That wasn't even in my dreams. I was like, that is so far out there. But yeah, I grew up in Florida. I grew up in Port St. Lucie and not like the best area. We were really poor. We filed for bankruptcy like 3 times, but I had no idea. I was like a little kid living my best life. Like when it came around to like Easter, for example, usually all these kids would get all this like amazing candy and go to school, but we were like, we didn't have a lot of money. And so candy was really expensive. And so instead my mom would write notes from Jesus. So she'd be like, Jesus loves you. And so I'd open the egg, but I thought it was so much cooler. But it was really just because we were poor. But I'd go to school and I'd be like, screw your Butterfingers. I got a handwritten letter from Jesus.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So that's a
man.
perfect example of like just making the most out of it. And so I had no idea that we weren't doing well. Like apparently our house was infested with like poison spiders, but like we just made a game out of it and like just kept hairspray everywhere and like chased them around. So we just made the most out of it. I had no idea until I was in technology class and everyone was just like Googling themselves. And I Googled my parents and it came up with the court case of their bankruptcy. And I was like, Dad, what is this? And he was like, So I had no idea, but my parents did a really amazing job at hiding that. And we just like made the most out of life. And then sadly, my mom ended up passing away when I was 10 years old when we were on vacation out of nowhere. So then I became really close with my godmom, Sherry, which is kind of how I became in this world. And she ended up working with Brian, which is kind of how I know you. And so from there, it was really interesting. Like we kind of moved cities. My dad got remarried, just kind of became really more independent and focusing more on like what my future was going to be, like doing well in school. And then once I graduated, COVID hit. And so I was like,
Wait, so I want to pause for a second because I don't think people realize. So, Mac, how old are you?
I'm 20.
I
usually tell people.
Can't even legally drink, and she's just like crushing it, right? Like
legally drink, and no one knows. I'll have clients for like 1 or 2 years, and I'll eventually tell. I remember I told my client I was at dinner with them drinking wine, and I was like, I'm 19. They didn't know.
Oh, it's so funny. Just what you accomplished at such a young age is just like the coolest thing in the world. She was like, was it Mexico? Was it Mexico?
What about
Mexico? And she flew in there. They're like getting police escorts, like everywhere they went, everywhere. and like she's just like on her Instagram story with like police lights in front of her
I
guiding
have
her through
crazy
traffic.
stories,
Yeah,
but I didn't realize I have the craziest stories until I tell people, and they're like, "That's not normal."
no, and like she's worked with like Mike Tyson and Boys to Men and like just like some really really big names when it comes to PR, like or when it comes to anything, but like working with those people doing their PR is just crazy.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
guess.
back to your story, but I just want to like stop for a second. She's like fresh out of like COVID was when she graduated high school. Yeah,
Yeah, I was 18 and COVID hit.
yeah, not college, not her, PhD. No, high
High
school.
school. Which I guess I'll give a little backstory with like that Mike Tyson and how my intro into PR. I was 15. I was a freshman in high school, and I really needed volunteer hours for school to be able to graduate. And so I put in like my community Facebook group. I was like, "Hey guys, like, does anyone need any help around like the neighborhood?" And my old boss was like, "Yeah, like come organize my office." And so she had a team at like an assistant at the time, and I showed up and I like organized all of her magazines of like Mike Tyson on the cover of like People magazine and stuff. And I just didn't think anything. I didn't really know who he was. The name sounded familiar, but I was 15. I really didn't know. And so we hit it off. She ended up firing her assistant, hiring me. And I went home and I Googled Mike Tyson and all this stuff came up about he had a pet tiger, he bit someone's ear off. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I getting myself into? And so yeah, at 15, I ended up just working with her. It was just me and her. And then I worked there for 4 years. I mean, like the craziest, funniest things. Like I remember when the beginning of kind of COVID was happening and everything went virtual. I was kind of in charge of like finalizing the schedules and sending things to like Mike's manager. And I remember I think it was, I don't remember if it was Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, but we were getting him on there and I had to copy and paste the Zoom link to like send it to him. And everything in PR is so last minute. Like it's 10 minutes before he's about to get on. And I'm like just sending him the schedule. And I accidentally clicked on the link instead of like copying it. And so then it says like loading into like Jimmy's room. And I'm like ducking down, like, no, 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 no. I'm like, how funny would that be if I really hope they would like have a waiting room before I just ended up on
That would
like
be so funny though. Could you imagine?
like on TMZ, like PR assistant accidentally ends up on Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh, shit. Yeah. And have you like had any conversations with Mike or Mike Tyson or anyone?
So like only on the phone or FaceTime. Like I don't think he'd have any idea who I was. I wasn't really involved in like the in front of the scenes thing. Like I wasn't really
You
like at the
like
red
Mike
carpet.
Tyson on FaceTime though.
Yeah. Like it was more just like hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Like that
Yeah.
was it.
Oh,
But
okay.
all my friends thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. Like all my guy friends were like, I would kill to be you. And I'm like, I don't even know who Mike Tyson
Yeah, dude,
is.
he's the champ. I'm saying like, oh, just be able to say hi, hello to Mike on FaceTime. That's so
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. I was more like the behind the scene person. So my boss would be like, I remember he had a big event at Art Basel in Miami, and she was there like on the red carpet with him, and I was the one at home like updating the guest list, like trying to make sure everyone could get in.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And that was up until you were 19.
Yep, up until I was 19. I ended up after leaving college, or after leaving high school, I ended up going to college for a semester. And while I was like in school, I was also working remote with the Joe Magano, who was the celebrity publicist I was working with. And then I kind of realized that I could maybe take a step on myself and start doing some freelance clients. And so I ended up leaving and just taking on like some really small things and eventually kind of grew and then started my own PR firm.
Really cool. 20 years old. It's amazing. Um, that's wow. It's wow. And so what was, some of the struggles that you had to go through um while you were either working for her or like starting your own business? What was, let's take it from starting your own business, right? Like what was going through your mind when you were just like, I can do this on my own?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like my situation's like a little bit different. Like I remember when my dad started his own business, he was like 35, and he had like the contacts. It made sense for him to finally take that step. I was 18 or 19. And so my first kind of battle was everyone kind of saying like, that's not normal. Like 18, 19-year-olds don't drop out of college and start their own business. Like, don't do that. And so that was kind of my first hurdle with like me getting over those thoughts as well. Like me sitting there like, yeah, this isn't normal. Like, this is kind of scary. Like having that degree, even though I was in college and I was not learning anything. I already learned all of everything that I was kind of needing to be successful within my career from my experience, like working with these celebrities. But it was still kind of scary, like getting out of my comfort zone and deciding, like, okay, I'm not going to have this 4-year bachelor's degree to fall back on. I'm not going to have a plan B. This is my only plan, so it has to work this way. So kind of getting over that hurdle of like, I'm going to do this and it has to work. But I remember like it was the age of COVID, everything was also virtual. Like usually when people would start businesses and stuff, like you'd meet with your team in person and all that. I started my business with my co-founder Josiah, and we didn't even meet for a year. Like we only met on Zoom, just like this. This is all of our meetings. This is how we got all of our clients. Everything was completely digital. And so it was definitely an interesting shift trying to start a business like that as well. Like I only knew the 50% of my other half of my business, only the top of their body. Like I had no idea. Like I had no idea how tall he was or anything until a year after we like were well established and doing well. So I guess there was just so many different things with my age, just the climate that we were in with COVID. I mean, it was kind of scary. Like all these businesses were shutting down, and here I am trying to start a business.
Yeah.
And so it's like people were being more careful about what they were spending their money on, like not necessarily like PR, I would say, like when starting a business isn't like the first thing you want to jump into. First, you want to, like establish your business, get a website, like create branding. And so PR was kind of more of like a luxury thing that you would add to your business if you wanted to be more successful, but it wasn't something like you absolutely needed to like just start. And so it was kind of like battling like all of these things in the climate.
Yeah. So I think that there's always like a lot of reasons why like it wouldn't work. No matter what business you start, no matter what you're doing, right? There's always like a million reasons why it shouldn't work. Like you're 18, you're 19, you're dropping out of college, you don't have a degree, you never started a business before, you don't have all the contact. Like there's list after list. COVID, people aren't spending the money. Like you list off a bunch of reasons why it wouldn't work, right? And I think that could go for anyone starting a business basically at any time. They could come up with a million reasons why it wouldn't work. So I want to know, well, why you still did it anyway, number one. Number two, what advice you give to someone who's thinking about starting a business like this? Or not in PR, but just starting a business in general, right?
So I really have to say, I know COVID was terrible and we lost so many amazing people, but it really ended up being a blessing in disguise for me personally. Because if it didn't happen, I'd be sitting in a dorm room at the University of Florida studying for my accounting final instead of where I'm at right now. And so I impulsively decided to move to Texas and move in with my godmom. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this for a few months just until COVID chills out, and then I'll go back to school. And I remember I was in college. It was right before I was starting my business. I was kind of thinking about all this stuff, all those thoughts that I just went over about why it wouldn't work were going through my head. And I'm so grateful for her and kind of just this community because Sherry Thompson, that was her name, she just got into thinking into results, all these mindset things, kind of some like a lot of work, self-development work that wasn't really traditional. And so a lot of people would traditionally be like, you're 18, you can't do this. Whereas like the content that she was kind of learning, the books that we were reading and the content we were reading about like just your mindset was like, you can if you believe. And I know to a lot of people, it just sounds like rainbows and fairy dust and whatever. But then I was really getting into like the science behind it, where it's not just like I'm sitting in the corner of my room saying like, I will be successful. It's like I'm reprogramming my brain out of societal norms to actually be successful. And so I have to say like the only reason I am where I am like today and like why I actually decided to take that leap to like start this business or to drop out of college was like solely because of like this mindset work that I got into because of my godmom and the content that she was involved in. And so I think first off, all the people that I've met that are like kind of involved in it, and it's not even like it sounds like this like exclusive group. It's like it's literally just kind of like there's so many. I just went to Barnes and Nobles yesterday, and there was like a million books about this stuff, and it's just kind of about like, you know, your subconscious mind. And you know, when you wake up and brush your teeth, it's like at some point when you're a baby, you don't, it doesn't register. You're not like, oh yeah, this is just something I have to do. Now we just kind of wake up and we impulsively do it because it's in our subconscious. And so that transfers also into like how we carry ourselves, how we believe certain things, how we think we're going to be successful. And so if you can really program yourself to believe those things in your subconscious, it can't happen. And so when I kind of explain it to people in like the scientific way, they're like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And so I was kind of coming to believe all of this, like at that young age, going and starting a business and kind of breaking out of those societal norms of like, you can't do this. And so I, at like any given point, if I find anyone that is like remotely interested in like breaking out of the 9 to 5 and wanting to kind of like step into like another version of themselves, it's like look some stuff up on YouTube, like read this book, like get involved in like understanding yourself and your mind and like how you operate. So I would say that to like anyone that's like has any interest, not even only in starting a business, but like leveling up, or even if you want to just be successful within your corporate job or your 9 to 5 you have now, it's like I would highly recommend like getting involved and like really like understanding how you operate and how your thoughts can affect you.
I agree.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that's perfect. You're actually one of the shorter spoken of a lot of my podcast guests.
I like to get to the point.
Yeah, I know that was good. So I also let's just give like what's like a book that someone should go pick up.
Okay, so Think and Grow Rich was the first book that I read that like really got my brain turning. And I also got like the workbook version of it. So it's really a book about like not only thinking yourself into like being wealthy, but being rich in many areas of your life, about family, about happiness, about friendships, about like self-confidence. Like it covers all of it. And it was very interactive, like going through like, okay, what am I passionate about? Now, how do I make steps to get there? How do I like hold myself accountable? It was all in that book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, it's a really fun one to start with, in my opinion. I've read these are like nowhere near as many books as I've read it, but Think and Grow Rich is actually this is it right here. It's like I forget what it's called, leather bound or whatever. Yeah. There's this. I think it's in Think and Grow Rich. Yeah, it is. There's a story about this guy who like had this piece of land, and he found like a golden nugget in it. And then he was like, holy smokes, if there's one golden nugget, that means there's more. So he went digging like crazy. He like bought a bunch of machinery, went in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt back in like the 1800s, like early 1900s, late 1800s. So like hundreds of thousands of dollars were a lot more back then too. And then kept digging, and he couldn't find, or he found like a couple pieces here and there, but he couldn't find like a whole bunch, right? And he was so upside down, owed people a lot of money, and he decided to sell the land, right? And you remember the story I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's so good. So he sells the land, and this guy who had different knowledge, like different like awareness, he knew to go ask someone else who knew more than him, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, hey, I have this piece of land, they found gold. Can you tell me what I should do to find this other thing, like find more of it, right? Ultimately, he's like, oh yeah, just get this piece of equipment and go and do this here. And it's crazy. This guy who sold the land stopped 3 feet short of a literal gold mine. And he found that out. And what he took from it was really cool, is that he ended up becoming a life insurance salesman. And so he said that I stopped 3 feet short of gold, and that's what stopped me from success. So I'll never let someone tell me no stop me from getting to sell life insurance, becoming very wealthy selling life insurance. But that's like just like one piece out of the whole book. Like that's a very small sliver. Yeah. Highly recommend. It's a really fun place to start. it gets you thinking like in a different way. I actually think that the book title kind of throws people off, especially people who aren't like into it. Like they're like they think like being rich is bad, or they think
Yeah,
that
I think that they're being selfish by reading that book.
yeah,
In reality, it's like also like majority of the book is like, yeah, for sure, like have these goals, achieve these things for yourself, but how are you going to get back?
and
Like, how are you going to help people around you? That's majority of the book as well. So it's like the title, like people just misperceive what it's actually going on.
totally. So I forgot the other stuff that you were saying before that. So practical, one book to read, Think and Grow Rich. And you moved to Texas, you stay with your godmother, she shared with you this content, she believed in you, you're like, and you believed in yourself because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you learned this content as well and everything. And
Yeah,
when
I
did
remember.
Josiah come into the mix? How did
Huh?
this when did Josiah come to the mix? How did you meet Josiah? Who is
Yeah.
Josiah? Tell the audience.
Yeah. So Josiah Began is my business partner, best friend, roommate, all the things. So it's so funny because I don't know. I guess we definitely both manifested each other, but not in a way I guess we expected. But I was living with my godmom, you know, she was introducing me to this content. She just decided to quit her corporate job to kind of decide to teach this content. And I mean, I was definitely interested, you know, in like launching businesses or whatever. So I decided to kind of help her with her admin, you know, like help create contracts and her socials or whatever. And so I was kind of helping her with that stuff. And then she decided to bring on Josiah to run her marketing. And so again, we were just like meeting on a Zoom call like this, and I was just kind of in the corner and just going over like what to post on social media, whatever. And so after months in, I kind of like shared with him like my other job, my expertise, and like what I've been working in for like the last 4 years. And it kind of clicked with him as like, oh, I've always wanted to kind of explore that arena more. Like I do really well within like sales and business and like running the back end of things. But I'm not like super familiar in like public relations, like how that all operates, like those contacts, everything. And I was like, well, I do. And so we decided to kind of like join forces, and he had the contacts and sales and like the business experience. And so I knew how to do like actual public relations. So we decided to like team up. And I remember it was on November 4th. We got on a call and we designed our logo and everything. And I remember being like, what the heck just happened? I guess I'm starting a business. And we ended up just kind of like really hitting it off. Like I said, we didn't even meet for a year. And I remember it was so weird. He lived in Fort Lauderdale. I was still in Texas. I flew to Texas to go, or I mean, I flew to Florida to go meet him. And I don't know where he lives. I've never met him before. So I like go to his address and I'm like on, you know, on the street trying to figure out like which building is his. He lives in this giant apartment complex, and I'm literally like on the street. And Josiah is very into like mindset and spirituality. And I knew that, but like not to the extent until like I met him. And I'm like literally on the street, probably like a block and a half from his building. And I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time, and we're like, where are we? And Josiah just turns the corner, and like, I did not tell him how close we were. I didn't tell him we were there. He didn't have my location. He had nothing. And he's like, I just felt you. He's like, I'm just, and I was just like, what? He was like, yeah, I mean, like sometimes when the pizza man will come, like I'll just open the door before he even knocks and I'll freak him out. And so it was just so interesting where it's like, we just kind of like just meshed right away. And like, he still does now that we live together. Like I'll literally come home and he'll just open the door and I don't even like put my key in or anything. I'm like, you got to stop doing that.
Gotta stop doing that. That's funny. Um,
Yeah, I'll turn the corner and the door will be open and I'm like, oh my gosh, like someone break in. He's just like, hey.
what's up? That sounds like Josiah. Um, and when I'm trying to like piece all this together, like when was this and how did this all happen? Like, because it was like in such a short amount of time. Um,
Yeah, it's been like within the last 2 years, all of this has happened. Like the starting of my business, like moving a million different places, but it feels like it's been forever. I feel like I'm like 45. So even when I say I'm 20, I'm like, I can't believe it.
no, no. So Other than Think and Grow Rich, what's one book that everyone should read?
So, I am reading a book right now called Psycho-Cybernetics. I feel like I can read Think and Grow Rich and all these books like over and over again and always have a different takeaway each time. And I feel like Psycho-Cybernetics, like when I tell my friends, I'm like, you have to read this book. And they're all like, what is wrong with you? Are you reading a science textbook? I'm like, kinda. But it's a really amazing book and it kind of just focuses on like our self-image of ourselves. It's written by a plastic surgeon and he kind of goes over like, yeah, I help people fix maybe if they have like a bump on their nose or something imperfected on their face, I can help them fix that. But at the end of the day, they will still act the same way that they did before with those imperfections because of their self-image that they hold of themselves. And so kind of just is a book going over like what you can really change how you view yourself and your self-image and how you think other people perceive you, that can change everything. Like if you hold in your mind that you are a successful individual and you can make a lot of money and you can accomplish a lot of things, then you can. But if you have the self-image that you can only work in like a at 7-Eleven and you can only make minimum wage and you can only be friends with these kinds of people, then that's what's also going to happen. And I really like the book because at the end of each chapter, it makes you like interact with the book. Like there's questions about like, what was your key takeaway? How did this align in your life? Like, how are you now going to change? And so it's like, I feel like I'll read so many books and then at the end of it, I'm like I did get a lot out of it, but I don't really remember. And so I can always like keep reading and reading. But this one now, even when I reread it, I'll see like even the problems that I wrote that I was struggling with at the time that maybe I've even worked through just by reading that book. And so I'll reread the chapter and it's like, oh wow, I can't believe I was struggling with that. I feel like I've come such a long way.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books of all time. There's like two things that I think everyone should do is like figure out what they really, really want. Is number one, right? Like a fantasy, figure out what you really, really, truly want. Like make a shopping list of all those things without thinking about any restrictions at all, right? Write them all out. And then the piece in the book, do you remember when it talks about like the submarine missiles?
I don't know.
So like these like submarine underwater missiles in World War II would like shoot, but they had like guiding systems,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
right? So it would shoot and then it would get off track and it would send feedback to the computer and it would put it back on track. It might like overcorrect and go the wrong way, just more to the right when it was going to the left. Then it will recorrect again. And then the whole time it's going after this one target, it's just recorrecting the whole time, but it has the target in the back. This book talks about like how we're like goal-seeking organisms as human beings, and that if we can just hold on to the goal and take steps towards it, that we are going to automatically auto-correct. So like even if you make mistakes along the way, you're just going to keep auto-correcting back and forth the entire way to your goal.
I love that.
And I'm like, and then that's also his argument of where like you don't need to force anything. What you have to do is worry about where you want to go and focus on it, because you are the machine, the computer to get you there. You don't have to be any different. You have to do anything different. You just have to know where you're going.
Yep. I think have you ever listened to The Strangest Secret?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's a YouTube video. I'm totally blanking on.
Yeah, you're gonna have to text me that for sure.
It's gonna drive me crazy if I can't remember the name. It's like such a famous name. But pretty much he kind of describes this was like one of Bob Proctor's like mentors. And so he kind of describes a goal, strangest see Earl Nightingale.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. No.
Yeah. So he describes success as having a defined goal. So it's like he kind of describes like go up to 1 million people on the road and maybe like 5% of them will have a defined goal. And so he doesn't describe it as having a certain amount of money or having there you go. Literally having a defined.
The guys aren't watching. I just pulled out what we call a goal card. It's out of my wallet that I carry with me everywhere. And it has my goal written on it. I have a long-term and a short-term goal, front and back. everywhere. But anyways, keep going.
Do it. But yeah, he kind of described like not many people in the world would actually have that, and just having a defined goal is what makes you successful. So even if you're maybe you're not trying to make a bajillion dollars and own every business in the world, maybe you want to be a teacher, and you have a defined goal of how you want to be a successful teacher and the kids that you want to help. But if you have that goal and you're working towards it, that makes you successful no matter what area of work that you're working in. And so I feel like I've heard that question so many times growing up, just like, what is success? And so many people describe it in so many different ways, like happiness or wealth or money, where it's like that totally aligns with me, just having a defined goal.
I love that too. So, it's be interesting. About to turn 29. I just feel like I'm so, like,
You're about to turn 29?
yeah, in January. So
When's your birthday?
the 25th.
Oh, mine's the 11th.
Oh man. Maybe that will be our trip to LA. We'll do like in between or something.
Are you an Aquarius?
Yeah.
I'm a Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
We're off.
We're off. Yep.
Yeah, come to LA for our birthdays.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go have fun.
I'll be 21.
Yeah, that's funny. Not that it's an issue for you anyway, but yeah, this question is interesting because you are so young. And it feels weird, but like think about what you've done in 2 years and then like compare like I had 9 extra years or whatever.
I know. I'm like all of my friends that I really don't have many friends my age. Like I have friends from high school that I still keep in contact with, of course, but like my true like close friends in my like circle are all way older, like 10, 15 years older. And so like, you can't help but compare of like, oh, where they're at with their business and like, oh, I want to be there, whatever. But then I think about I have like 15 years to get there, or I can't even imagine where I'm going to be in 15
Yeah,
years.
it'd be so much further along that
Yeah.
like I did this. I started in COVID too. I started February 2020 when I started my business, and then yeah, what's happened in 2 years, like, but if I started that when I was 19 or 20, where would I be when I'm 28? Like, my God, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I'm like thinking about like a $20 million exit the next 3 to 5 years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so it's crazy. Like, I would have already had that exit.
I mean, I do hear a lot of people saying that, like, oh, if I would have started earlier, if I would have done this, but in reality, you weren't ready then. You didn't know what you knew
Amen
yet.
to that.
You didn't know
You're
the
right.
people. You wouldn't be, maybe you would have started then, but then you would have given up because you didn't have the resources that you do now.
You're right. You are right. So this question, ready for this one? This one stumps everyone. Have you ever listened to my podcast?
I've listened to all the snippets, but I
Yeah,
haven't listened to it full through.
yeah, it's pretty good. Like, I mean, like, the ending is good, and I can always tell if someone's listened or not.
Oh no, I'm ready.
You ready? So you got to go back in time to any age. You got to go talk to yourself. But when you go back there, you can only tell yourself 3 sentences. What age would you go back to? What are the 3 sentences? And I'm very, very strict about this. Like, only give me the 3 sentences. Don't say why in between, nothing. Just clear, concise, these are the 3 sentences. And then afterwards, if you want to tell us why, great. If you don't, sometimes it's like beautiful just leaving it as is, or it's kind of like self-explanatory. So I'm interested. What age would you go back to? What are the 3 sentences?
Oh my gosh, wow. I think I would probably go back to like 16 or 17. Yeah, 16 or 17. And I would say to, let's think, I would want to, I would probably tell myself to focus on my own goals and ambitions first. And then I would tell myself to always seek knowledge. And let me think, what if I learned that I'd tell myself now or back then? to take the leap.
Cool.
I think I'd keep it vague because I still want to make sure I can make the mistakes. It's okay.
Right.
I feel like the mistakes that I did make along the way are why I'm here. So it's okay to make the mistakes.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I don't know if I've said this in the podcast before. I was probably about your age, 19 or 20. Maybe I was 21. Maybe I was 21. No, I was like your age. I was like 19 or 20. And I went to, I failed out of college my first year. Right.
Oh, wow.
And then I went, then what would have been the next semester, I moved to California in like the Redwoods of Northern California, like 3 hours north of San Francisco. So way up there. And then I trimmed weed. That's what I did. I trimmed weed for hours and hours all day, sitting in a circle. It was a really cool experience. We had like 2 German girls that were there. We had this guy from Tennessee who was missing teeth, and it was just a wild experience. And it was like super gorgeous. You look like in the redwoods, which are like these massive trees you could drive a car through.
This was like your job?
Yeah, this is what I went and did, and it was illegal back then. Like
in California, yeah.
Yeah, there was medical dispensaries then, but it was illegal to do what we were doing. And like there was like it was crazy. We had black helicopters fly above us that had DEA on it. Like they're just floating in the sky throughout the day and stuff. Yeah, wild. And then when I was there, I had the opportunity to take what it's called mescaline. It's like peyote, right?
What is it? Is it a drug?
Hallucinogen. It's
Okay.
like the Native Americans would take it, and they'd either go to in a sweat lodge all together and it'd be this huge experience, or they would do solo trips where they'd go out into like the desert or the nature and go off and like have a vision and stuff, right?
So is that what you did?
So I did. Well, what we did was we like brewed it into like a tea, which tasted horrible, and we weren't sure. It was pretty old, like it had been sitting around for a while. The guy who I was staying with, like just had it for a while. I was like, oh, I want to do this, you know.
Keaton, this is so funny.
Yeah, and is this like 10 years ago? So we weren't sure if it got stronger or weaker over time. We just assumed that I got weaker, so like I took like triple dose or whatever. And then I went into the redwoods. They dropped me off in the car at the bottom of the hill. There's like a national park with the redwoods. It goes to like a stream. Absolutely by myself. Yep. And I've been there a few times, right? Like I visited my brother who lived out there a few times, so I've been in this specific. It's called the Hindi Woods, and huge story throughout it. After I went on this huge journey, like I got to this stream. There's turkey vultures above me, and these are big, like 5 feet tall vultures, like a bunch of them circling above me and getting really, really close. And who knows if I'm hallucinating or what? We have no idea.
5 feet tall vultures.
Well, like no, I'm dead seriously. That's how they are up there. Like legit. But like I don't know if it was me hallucinating or what. But like that's what I saw. And they were circling above me and getting closer and closer and lower. And then there's like 30 of them, like a bunch all around me. I'm by myself in the middle of like this thing. I'm like, and I see the tree line. And mind you, like I was just like taking off my clothes to like go hop in the stream for a little bit and stuff. And then I see that happening. I'm like trying to put on my pants, my shirt, and like go run back to the trees, and I did. But I was like, these guys are about to kill me, you know. But anyway, so after this huge trip, that's like one part of it. This huge long trip, for hours and hours and hours. I go back in the woods, and the stream runs through the woods, and I sit down next to it, and I like meditate for a little while, and I had a conversation with my 40-year-old self. This is actually why.
Self?
Yeah, and this is why I bring this question up to people all the time in this podcast, right? What age would you go back to and what would you say? Right. And I basically was asking my 40-year-old self for wisdom. And like it was vivid. And I was like I was having a conversation with him sitting right there, you know.
It's wild.
Isn't it wild? I don't condone
I was wondering where that story was going.
yeah, right. So I don't condone doing drugs or like doing this stuff. But my decisions have been made. So now there's stories that I get to share with you guys, right? And
now, like, from hearing that, I would change my answer. I'd probably go back to my 10-year-old self.
you know what he said to me?
What did he say?
He said, just,
What did
huh?
you? So what did you say?
Yeah, what did I say, right? And I would say the same thing now to that same, and I was like a troubled individual at that period of time. I just failed out. I was partying all the time back before when I was at URI. That's why I failed out. I was getting into like messing, just experimenting with a bunch of drugs, obviously, right? And it just like wasn't good, right? And what I said, I didn't like tell him to not do something or change anything about what I literally said. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine. That's the 40-year-old self said, and I didn't know this, but like I had some very like major hardship within the next year or two, major, like potential to ruin my rest of my life, and I still said, knowing that as the 40-year-old self, just keep doing what you're doing. Supposedly, right? If that is really what happened, who knows? But it felt real.
That's what happened for you.
It felt real, you know. So, and then it led me to like where I am now, and it's pretty fantastic. And I can imagine when I'm 40, it's going to be just as fantastic. Well, times a million, right? But yeah, that's why I asked this question. So,
and how old are your kids?
So I had my daughter when I was 22. A week later, I turned 23 when she was born. Yeah, so I was still really young. I met Chelsea the year after that, like the year after that trip.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Are your kids? Isn't she 4 or 5?
Yeah, she's 5 now.
Well, yeah, because now thinking about it from that perspective, like think about her being 4 and the knowledge that she has. Or like certain kids, like obviously they're young, like they don't know too much, but they'll just spit out some stuff every once in a while, and you're like, holy crap, that was powerful.
Yeah, yes, she does do that quite a bit. So I always ask that question. And so, what would you change your answer to?
Well, thinking from that perspective, 10 years old was when my mom passed away. And that was probably the hardest time because, I'm a little kid. I just lost my mom, wasn't really close with my dad and all that. So I'd probably go back and I would say that it's gonna be okay. Cause I was at some point, I was always like, this is not gonna be okay. Like, I'm not gonna get through this. This sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's all gonna be okay. I feel like that's what I really needed to know at that time.
Right.
Like, and I think I always question my be able to get out of that world. So something of like it's gonna be okay. Like you will get to where you need to be and to keep focusing on your goals and yourself. Because I did tend to put other people above myself and my own goals. So making sure I didn't do that, that I knew I was gonna be okay, and then I knew I'd be able to get out of that situation. Because I always was like, that's why I felt like I worked so hard in schools because like I want to get out of here. I want to get the best scholarship to go to the best school so I can just live my own life and not have to like worry about all the stuff that's happened here. And so now it's like where I'm at, everything happened how it needed to be. And I've repaired those relationships. But at that time when I was 10, I had no idea where I'd be.
That's good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Good.
I'm just gonna go to these people and ask them.
Be like, yeah, a good question. I've thought about obviously I took some time before I launched this podcast to think about that question. I thought it was like a really good one. What I want to do is I want the whole podcast to be a string of really thoughtful questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is where I want to go with this podcast. Just jump right into it and boom, boom, boom. Here's the last one. You ready for this one?
Some more. Okay.
What's your biggest regret?
I feel like the correct answer to that is that I don't have regrets. I feel like, of course, like you impulsively want to be like, oh, I wish I was never in that relationship, or I wish I never did this. But I feel like at the end of the day, doing all of those things led me to learn different lessons about myself.
Without a doubt. Now let's reframe it. What's something that you did? Let's call it a regret, right? That you could help someone else to maybe keep, if they hear this, this might be the thing that keeps them from doing it.
So I feel like if I were to have to say like I have one regret would be like in high school, I was so focused on getting the best grades, like being the president of every club, like starting a nonprofit, like doing the best I could do to look the best for colleges. And so I feel like I didn't actually live and have as much fun and like just be as happy as I should have been during those years because I was so focused on my future. And so I feel like I would want to say to others, like, be more in the moment rather than focusing so much in the future. Um, Especially like in your childhood, like be blissful, like go to that party, like go hang out with that boy. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. I never went to a single high school party, anything. So I was so focused on trying to look good for college. And I'm a college dropout. So I spent all of that time and all of that energy and ran all of those clubs. And in the long term, yeah, I experienced like I got experience from those things. I met good people, but ultimately I didn't actually do the thing I was working towards. Like I did get into the college, but I ended up leaving. So I wouldn't say I wasted all that time, but I didn't experience things that I wish I would have because I was so focused on like this one thing I thought I had to do because society said to.
It's good, Mac. It's good. Well, I'm very happy to know you, and I'm happy to be able to introduce my audience to you. So I would love for you to just share where can everyone go follow you and check out what you're up to and all that good stuff.
Yeah, my Instagram is at mac.abbott, M-A-C-K with a K, .abbott. Mac like Mac trucks, mac and cheese, MacBooks.
You know what's funny is when how I met you, we were at a mastermind in Nashville, right? But like before, we had a group text and we were talking about getting this huge Airbnb house, right? Like I don't know how many rooms, it was like 11 rooms or something, but um we were like talking about all the people that are going and they're like, oh, Mac's going and stuff. And I thought you were a guy.
Everyone does.
Yeah. I was like,
Amazing because I'll get on Zoom calls like this with like potential client leads or journalists or whatever, and I'll get on. They're like, "Oh, like, hi, are you the assistant?
Mac.
Like, we're waiting for Mac." And I'm like, "That's me." Like, all I've gone on so many calls with like these professional businessmen, and like I just see their like the like color come out of their face, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like I was not expecting this. I'm like this young little girl, like, "Hey."
Yeah, I know. It is wicked funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I please go follow Mac on Instagram and send her a DM and tell her what you liked about the episode and all that. And then I just want to thank all the audience. You know, thank you guys for listening. It means the world to me, especially if you made it this long, like 55 minutes in, 50 minutes in. So if you leave a like, a review, share this out. This episode was for you, great. If it wasn't, it's probably for someone else you know. So share this one out. And yeah, until next time, peace.